Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we're beginning our look at the Visuddhimagga, um, and encouraging people to actually pick up the text and read it. You can get PDF version for free on the internet, I've seen, so it's readily available, and there's several different print editions out there. And today we're going to talk about the first two chapters that deal with morality, Sila. The three stages of the practice path are Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Morality or virtue, concentration, although I don't like that word, but Samadhi, meditation, and Panya is wisdom, which is often equated in practice with Vipassana practice. So today we're dealing with the very first level of that, the level of morality, and my intention in these talks is not so much to go through, reiterate point by point what the Visuddhimagga says, but to make it more approachable, to look at the way Buddhaghosa deals with topics, which is an extremely technical approach, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's very informative. And there are two chapters in this on the topic of virtue. The first one is chapter 1, which deals with Sila in general, and then he's got a specialty chapter on the Dhutanga practices, the ascetic practices. First thing to note is that the Visuddhimagga was primarily written for a monastic audience. So when he's talking about virtue and keeping precepts, his emphasis is on the bhikkhu precepts, the 227 rules of the Patimokkha. It's obvious he's assuming that most of the readers of this will be bhikkhus. And one thing to notice in the text, which this is a kind of a general structure of the work as a whole. You'll come across the references to the suttas. This is something really good that the translator Nyanamoli added to the text. You'll see scattered throughout brackets with a sutta reference. So it's using an old style of references that's kind of going out of fashion now, but it references page numbers to the Pali Text Society Pali editions. Now, if you're reading entirely in English translations of things, you may think that's pretty useless, but it's actually all the modern translations of Siddhika, Majjhima, and so on. You'll find numbers in square brackets in the middle of paragraphs throughout the text. Those are the page numbers from the Pali Text Society edition, so you can find things with a little effort if you want to look up a specific reference. Some of the style, the methodology that he uses is to try to make things very orderly. And he's got, for example, starting on paragraph 16, he's got a list of 7 topic headings. What is virtue? What sense is it virtue? What are its characteristic, function, manifestation, proximate cause? What are the benefits of virtue? How many kinds of virtue are they? What is the defiling of it? What is the cleansing of it? And then there'll be expansion of all of these. Now the third topic, what are the characteristic, function, and manifestation and proximate cause? This is a method of defining things that you'll see throughout the work. When a term or a topic is to be defined, you will elaborate these 4 points. What is its characteristic, function, manifestation, and proximate cause? So the characteristic of virtue, or Sila, is the coordinating of bodily action, etc., and as the foundation of profitable states. The characteristic oh no, that's the sorry, he hasn't done it in order here. That's the characteristic is coordinating of bodily action and foundation of profitable states. The function is to stop misconduct. The manifestation is purity, and the proximate cause is hiri ottappa. Now this is another point I want to raise here, is the particular translation of terms. Hiri and ottappa are Pali terms that he translates, Nyanamoli translates as consciousness and shame, or conscience and shame. Standard translation now seems to be shame and moral dread. I don't like any of these translations. They're kind of off-putting. Hiri and ottappa are the guardians of morality, and when you dig into the meaning, it's more like having hiri is more like having self-respect. So called shame, in translators use the word shame because if you are shameless, then you'll do bad things. You don't have respect for yourself, so you have no restraint that way. So I would think hiri is like self-respect, and ottappa is respect for consequences, moral dread. It's understanding the laws of karma. One is restrained in one's actions and virtue. So you'll see this way of defining things throughout the work. Characteristic, function, manifestation, and proximate cause. Proximate cause is a technical term from the Patana, one of the Abhidhamma books that talks about causality. Nothing arises without a cause, and nothing arises from a single cause, but causes can be analyzed in various ways, and one of them is proximate cause, which means the immediate trigger for an event or a dhamma to arise. Another thing we'll see here is these breaking things up into lists, and to make a topic orderly. I think this is very much Buddha Bosa's style. We see in paragraph 25 how many kinds of virtue are there, which was one of the 7 things that were listed, and he has 19 different answers to that question. For example, Number two, it is of two kinds, keeping and avoiding. So, that's kind of obvious. Number 13 is that of the trainer, the non-trainer, and the neither trainer nor non-trainer. Those are confusing terms if you don't know what he's talking about. That's translating the Pali seka, or learner, actually literally listener, and it's used in a technical sense in the suttas and the Abhidhamma to refer to someone who has attained stream entry is a seka. That they're in the stream. They're a trainer. A non-trainer is an arhat, who's beyond training, and a neither trainer nor non-trainer is a patujana, an ordinary person. So you'll see this sometimes. It'll be technical terms thrown out that if you're not familiar with the literature, it may not be evident to you. There's one other one I wanted to comment on. Oh yes, number 16. As natural, three kinds of virtue, as natural, or four kinds in this case, four kinds of virtue, as natural, customary, necessary, due to previous causes. And then, later on he goes into detail on all of these types. So natural virtue is kind of interesting. He says it's, for example, the virtue of the human beings who live on a Turakuru. So this is a reference to the Sumeru cosmology, that there's a continent on the other side of Sumeru from us where the beings are, it's sort of a ideal paradise, earthly paradise, and the beings, human beings there, naturally keep the 5 precepts flawlessly their entire life. So that's natural virtue. So it's not something we find in our ordinary experience. Customary virtue are each clan or locality or sect's rules of observance are customary virtue. So that's like your local social mores, which obviously differ from place to place and time to time. Necessary virtue, the example given is the bodhisattva's mother, and it quotes from the Digha Nikaya, and it's just one of the cases where he gives a reference. It is the necessary rule, Ananda, that when the bodhisattva has descended into the mother's womb, no thought of men that is connected with the cord of sense desire comes to her. So it's a necessary. It fulfills a kind of cosmological function. While she's bearing the bodhisattva, then she's free from sense desire. And due to previous causes is the virtue of pure beings such as Mahakassapa, etc. That's due to previous causes, because in the past they were ordinary beings and then they achieved the state of enlightenment. There are also in the Visuddhimagga, you'll see occasional stories interspersed, examples usually from the commentaries, or from many cases just from a Sri Lankan tradition. And some of these are not fully referenced in the text itself, but Nyanamoli has expanded them in the footnotes. Sometimes Buddhaghosa will just give the first line and say etc. You know, he's assuming that his reader knows all these stories and tropes. And if you don't, very often the expansion can be found in the footnotes, which are very thorough. They're very good. And like I said, the text is aimed really at bhikkhus. So there's a section here on proper livelihood, and none of, or most of this would not really apply to a layperson. But he lists different things, different ways of obtaining benefits from the laity that are improper. One kind of a curious phrase that I'm not sure what the Pali is that he's translating here. It's probably something pretty obscure, but Nyanamoli translates something as being superi, and it's explained in the text itself that it means talking a lot with very little meaning. Just as a pot of beans boiling, some of the beans will cook properly and some will be still half raw. So the value in your speech is diluted by a lot of nonsense. So I think that's enough for chapter 1. Chapter 2 is dealing with the Dhutanga practices, the 13 Dhutangas. This is found in the Vinaya. They're not rules as such, but they're optional practices for monks who want to practice in a more ascetic fashion. You can take a vow and keep one or more of these ascetic practices. And these are dealt with in some detail. The 13 are the refuse rag wearers practice. That means that the robes that if a monk is following this rule, he'll make his own robes, but only out of scraps of discarded cloth. He's not allowed to receive cloth as an offering, but only in refuse heaps or in taken from a corpse he can use. The triple robe wearers practice, the full monastic attire is a lower robe, an upper robe, and an outer robe that in our tradition, we mostly only wear that in ceremonial occasions, folded over the shoulder, but it was originally meant to be like a cloak for cold weather. And if one is following this rule strictly, one will only have those 3 robes and no other cloth. The alms food eaters practice, only eating that which is put in your bowl, and not accepting any like special invitations or so on. The house-to-house seekers practice means when you go on alms round, you go in an orderly fashion without picking and choosing like which is the best houses, where they give the best food. The one sessioners practice. The Vinaya rule is that monks are only allowed to eat at dawn, or from dawn till noon. But this is an additional restraint in that you only have one meal. You only eat at that one time. The bowl food eaters practice, eating only out of the bowl. The later food refusers practice. That is, if you've already received your food offering and you're not finished your meal and someone comes in with chocolate cake and wants to make an offering, you have to refuse it if you're following this. The forest dwellers practice to always live at least a certain distance away from a village. The tree root dwellers practice to not have a hut or a kuti to stay in, but just to sleep and live outdoors under a tree. Open air dwellers practice is similar, just to be anywhere out of doors. Charnel ground dwellers practice is to live and practice in a charnel ground, that is a cemetery. Any bed users practice, that is not to sleep at any chanced upon place, not to be picking and choosing about lodgings. And the sitters practice to never lie down, to always maintain either sitting or standing posture. Now I'll say a few things about these. The Dhutangas, the Thai language, they have the word tudong, which is derived from Dhutanga. And the tudong practice, or a tudong monk, is one who wanders, who doesn't stay in a single place. That is limited because there's a Vinaya rule that during the rainy season the monk has to stay in a lodging under cover. So some of these rules, like the tree root dwellers practice, cannot be practiced during the rainy season. Also, all of these Dhutangas have, and it gets into the details here quite a bit, but they have levels, the grades. You can practice any one of these rules in either a strict, a medium, or a mild fashion. And there's more allowances and loopholes, let's say, for milder practice. So all the Thai forest monks in general keep some version of many of these rules. Triple robe wearers, usually we only have the one set of robes, although we do have allowances for other cloth, and in cold climates that's extended quite a bit. The bowl food eaters practice, we eat out of our bowls, not eating out of on a knife and fork and plate and bowl and so on. The forest dwellers practice, that's almost a defining characteristic of a forest monk, to live a certain distance from a village. I'll say something about the sitters practice. This is something that is kind of a special practice for actually it's for raising energy, and it's a difficult practice that some monks will take for a period of time. It's not recommended to keep it as for a lifetime, but a monk will make a vow to stay for 3 months without lying down. So you end up sleeping in a sitting posture. Sometimes even just to do it for one night, just to practice through the night and make the determination, the adhitthana, not to lie down. That's keeping the sitters practice. One of the injunctions in the Visuddhimagga about the sitting practice is a monk who is keeping the sitting practice should not tell anyone, because it can become a kind of a boastfulness, and I think that could be generally extended to a lot of special practices. You say, "Oh, I'm so austere. I keep the sitters practice." You're supposed to keep it to yourself and not tell anyone or boast about it. So that's an introduction to the first two chapters of the Visuddhimagga, and like I said, I encourage people to pick up the book and try to read as much of it as you can. I realize it's not an easy read, but it's actually quite rewarding. And next week, if you want to read ahead and keep up here, next week we're going to do just a single chapter, chapter 3, which is the beginning the discussion of meditation. And this is really the meat of the Visuddhimagga. It's often used as a meditation manual, although there's much more to it than that, but it's one of the main kind of themes of the book. So we'll get into that next week, and then there's a few additional chapters dealing with specific meditations. So next week is chapter 3, if you want to read ahead. So I'll stop there and answer questions now. Let's see what we got. First question I see is, do the suttas say the correct way to give thanks to devas for helping when I believe the devas very well have helped me after asking for it and I wish to give appropriate praise? Yeah, you could make a symbolic offering to the devas. And praise them and thank them. This is all good. Is every possible thought dissatisfying? It seems to me that by their nature, views we take are always unsatisfying because they are finite before limiting. This is the quality of dukkha. Yes, it's actually, dukkha is a universal characteristic. So there's no within samsara. There's no ending or escaping from dukkha. So every possible thought, sankhara that arises in the mind will be to some degree dissatisfying. If it was completely satisfying, you wouldn't ever think of anything else. You just stay there. So all thoughts, all views, all sense experiences are always going to be dukkha. Even the very best ones, they're still not perfect. So that there's still manifestations in samsara. Question, does personality view and all other views belong to mental formation skandha? If I become dispassionate towards mental formations, will automatically become dispassionate towards other skandhas. Personality view, Sakkaya Ditthi, it is a mental formation. It's at the level of cognition. Asmi Mana is at the level of another khandha. It's at the level of perception or sanya. If I become dispassionate towards mental formations, will I automatically become dispassionate towards other skandhas? No. It will help. Once you see through one skandha, you begin to gain some footing in overcoming attachment to the others, but it doesn't completely eliminate attachment to the other skandhas if you're able to overcome one. Do you know of any variants or exceptions on the rule against ordaining novices over a certain age? It's not a rule. It's not a Vinaya rule, but it's kind of a practice they've adopted in our monasteries. Is we generally don't ordain men over the age of 50, but exceptions are made, and it's usually if someone that's known to the abbot, and we know that he's steady and reliable, and and not the problem with ordaining older men is that they're often too fixed in their ways by that time, and it's very hard to train. Is it reasonable to say that abysses between world systems are analogous with black holes? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that's a close analogy. Um, because there are beings that dwell in the abysses between world systems. It's one of the hell worlds, the cold, dark, lonely hell world. Do Chakawatis also spend a lifetime until seat to heaven before being born as a Chakawati? Yes, it's the same kind of course as a Mahaparisa, so they would. A Mahaparisa is a great man, and there are two kinds of great men or Mahaparisa. There's a Chakawati, a will-turning monarch, and a Buddha. So we have the story of the Buddha in his youth having the option to be a Chakawati. He rejected it and became a Buddha. How to stop grasping at the idea of non-grasping? It's extremely frustrating. Yeah, it's a house of mirrors. It sounds funny, but it is actually a problem that you can kind of get a second level of grasping at non-grasping. You just have to really learn just letting go, just liberating the mind from attachment to anything. Warm wishes from South Florida. Oh, great. Okay. I like the statement, virtue is volition. Generally speaking, I gather from this chapter that progression is not possible without virtue. Yes. Yeah. Virtue or Sila is the foundation of the practice, and everything else is built on that. And without virtue, one does not make progress. Is abstaining from all sexual activity as a layperson skillful? Does it make it easier to achieve or create positive karma? It may be if you're able to keep brahmacharya, then it is a conducive to the deeper states of samadhi. Really, the only kind of sexual strategies or lifestyles that are completely blameless, let us say, or are either monogamy, a dedicated relationship, or celibacy. How does one leave a partner skillfully in order to ordain? No, that's something you have to work out on a one-to-one basis. That's not necessarily easy. If the two of you have grown apart and you have now a different agenda, then it might, if your partner's still not at that level, it may be difficult for her to accept. Okay, so I think we'll stop there, and we'll I'll just take this one last one because it's kind of interesting. Do you consider Schopenhauer a Buddhist? Kind of a Buddhist. I mean, Schopenhauer was a German philosopher in the early 19th century, and he did study what Buddhist texts were available at the time, which was limited. And he had some knowledge of Buddhism. I don't know if he would consider himself fully a Buddhist anyway. Okay, so we'll leave it at that, and I'll check in with you next week when we're doing the first chapter on meditation.